Hello, word nerds! Welcome to our Sunday special live chat where we are talking about maintaining a large cast of characters. Actually, I'm going to double check and make sure this is on the right channel because I'm having a mild panic attack about it. But
it is.
Okay, good. We are so excited to be here today. And be sure to stay tuned in because at the end we're going to announce the winners of our giveaway, which is so exciting, and lots of people won, and there are some familiar names in there, which is exciting. So by talking about books that do maintain large casts of characters well. So does anyone want to start? The first one that I thought of was the Shatter Me series. By the end, there's kind of a lot of characters there. You've got Juliet and Warner and Adam and Kenji. Is that his name?
Kenji.
Yes. Yeah.
Kenji. Yeah. And there's like those twins, and there's just a ton of people there.
The younger brother and the dreadlock dude,
and yet you remember all of them so clearly. She did it correctly.
And it was the same with Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which is awesome because they're married. He had a ton of characters too. I never got confused.
Yeah, that's true. And also, I know we were going to say Harry Potter.
Yes.
That's one with a huge cast of characters that's done that really well.
Yeah.
And I don't get any of the names mixed up.
Yeah. One I was thinking of was the Diviners. Not only are there a lot of characters, there's a lot of like point of view, a lot of different points of view. So that one was really good.
Yeah.
And I was interested in all of them. It wasn't like, oh, I have to read about this boring person now. Like, I was interested to read about all the different people. So.
What do we consider a large cast of characters? Because I'm going through and trying to figure out. Because like, I love the Throne of Glass series now that I'm reading the third one.
I know, me too. And the cast of characters was like growing in that series.
Yeah, it is growing. There's a new guy named Rowan. There's all the, Selena, Dorian, Cowell, the King.
There's the witch
Nahima.
That's new to this one.
Yeah, there are a lot. That's a large cast.
It is a large cast, and I also find she throws in, like, I'm reading the Crown of Midnight right now. I'm almost done. She throws in, like, there's a section of, like, when the slaves start revolting. There's, like, the section where there's the slave girl. I don't think she'll come back, as far as I know, but it's still another character, right? And I think, like, she doesn't necessarily name the person, but you get a little chunk from her point of view. So that's still a large cast of characters. But the way she does it is good. Like, you don't throw in a whole bunch of backstory. It's just this little blip in her life. So that's done well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think what makes maintaining these casts of characters, and we've mentioned it already, is that we can so clearly know who is speaking. So each character has their defined voice, even though there's like a lot of them. They all are individuals still, and I mean, obviously you have dialogue tags to help you out, but if it's done really well, I don't even think I need dialogue tags because I immediately know who's saying what.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think I have a controversial opinion, but one of the largest casts of characters is J.R.R. Tolkien. But I don't think he did that well. I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to like hit me for saying this, but I was so confused when I read Tolkien because I felt like a lot of the names were really similar, and I felt like I was getting confused. Like if I had read if it wasn't Tolkien, I think that would have got bad reviews. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it wasn't Tolkien, people would have.
I would definitely argue that there is a certain point where your large cast of characters is like too large, and I call it the Breaking Dawn effect, where suddenly there are like 50 characters, and you're like, I'm not going to memorize all of your names because I don't care. Yeah, it's just there are too many. If you have to have like a tree and a list of who's in your cast in the back of your book.
Yeah.
I do also think, to kind of defend Tolkien just a little bit, although, yeah, I definitely got super confused reading it. Like, who are these people? And purely, like, family names are all really similar.
Oh, my gosh.
But I will also say that I think one thing to keep in mind with whether or not you should have a large cast of characters is the genre. And because it's, like, this, like, high epic fantasy, I think it's allowed. You know, like, you see in a lot of high epic fantasies, there's tons of characters, and like some of them play small parts and some big parts, and it happens a lot more in high fantasy. But if you're writing like it's like a young adult like contemporary and you have like 30 characters, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, for sure. But even I would have said to like, hey Tolkien, maybe don't use Sauron and Saruman.
That sounds super different.
I feel like I don't know, because I didn't read these books before I had already seen and loved the movie. So I'd watched The Fellowship of the Ring like 30 times before I was like, hey, I like this a lot. Maybe I should read the book. And so I felt like I already knew them a decent amount before I started.
Yeah, for sure. And you know Sauron and Saruman are such different characters. Like, especially if you watch the movies and then read the book, you've got a mental picture in your brain. When you first read them and you haven't seen them on screen, it's really hard.
I could definitely see that.
Even just watching the movie for the first time, I'm trying to remember everybody's names. I'm like, wait, I gotta write this down. Where's some?
Even the Fellowship, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, and they're the main characters.
Yeah.
12 of them, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah. I always loved it.
They're really hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
Like that into Throne of Glass, because there's like the pronunciation guide at the end. So like if I'm pronouncing it wrong and then someone else corrects me, I will never be able to say the correct name because the wrong name is always going to pop out as I read.
In your brain. It's the same thing. I think I told you guys this before, but my uncle and I both really liked the series The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, but we couldn't talk about it to each other because both of us had different, we'd made up pronunciations in our head for the characters, and when we tried to talk about it, we were like, oh, Bibbly Blob, and my uncle would be like, who? Like, we couldn't have a conversation because we couldn't tell who we were talking about.
That's why it's hard to talk about the Throne of Glass series. Like, I know how to pronounce most.
How do you pronounce the captain of the guard? Like Kale?
When I read it first, I kept saying Cole.
Like, that's what I said too.
Like C-O-A-L, but then I kind of
Kale in my head like a salad.
I think I'm Cowl.
Yeah. I think her pronunciation guide says that it's pronounced like chaos, but with an L on the end.
Kale.
Yes.
Kale. Oh, okay.
I don't like that.
I mean, the thing is,
I just read it as Cole.
It was the pronunciation guide was in the back of the book, so I finished the book, got to the pronunciation, was like, oh no.
Oh no.
I've been saying everything.
Susan Denner did a really good post about this in her newsletter this week, where she talked about, because her next book that's coming out in 2015, I think, is a high fantasy. And so she talked about her name choices because hers does have a large cast of characters, as far as I understand. And she talked about, like, find the culture that is influencing your work and look at those names and find ways that you can change them so that they're, like, slightly different, but still something that, like, someone would recognize. So, like, Selena, it was really easy. Like, oh, Selena's a real name, so Selena is not that huge of a difference, and it's not hard to say or remember.
Yeah, and I know she talked about in the newsletter, like, she talked about Game of Thrones and how George R.R. Martin used a lot of traditional, like, English medieval names, or, like, English names, and changed spellings and pronunciations of them. Because, and part of the thing is, like, back then, like, people didn't know how to spell their own names, and so there would have been different things. So, yeah.
I like that idea because it's something that's slightly different because it's epic fantasy or whatever, but then it's also familiar enough that you're not going to stumble over the pronunciation every time you read
It's not like a crazy, completely made-up word with just letters slapped together.
And actually, that's what I was reading the Pitch Wars feed, and that's what one of the mentors said, like, guys, I'm seeing a lot of crazy names, sometimes in contemporary novels, and you can't have a full cast of, like, Zarabob and Stimone and weird names.
I definitely think that's
Bob in there, you know?
That's something people, they always think, like, oh, my character has to have this really unique name. It can't just be like Jennifer.
Stephanie.
Like, I would love to see a story about a really hardcore Jennifer.
My name's Jennifer.
Like, she's an assassin, but her name is Jennifer.
Perfect.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think we read books sometimes and we're like, oh, this name feels to me like it's completely made up because it's not something we recognize, and so we think that's what you have to do as a writer. But yeah, when you like look into these names, like most writers pulled them from like mythology or from names from another culture. Like they didn't make them up. Like most of J.K. Rowling's names, like some of them are kind of weird, like Hermione and stuff like that, but she like pulled
Still
them from
British
real.
though, right? Like,
Yeah, well, Hermione
is
is from mythology.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe not British then.
And even Katniss. Katniss is a plant.
Yeah, Katniss is a plant. Yeah.
Too, yeah. Peta, that's a weird name. I always just thought like Peta, you put cheese in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's spelled really
With a British
phonetically.
And then
It's
he's
how
like
they-
a baker.
It's how they say Peter's name in the Chronicles of Narnia. Peter.
Yeah.
That was the inspiration for it. I want to write that.
Megan, what you said earlier about Jennifer, but she's an assassin, that reminded me. Have you ever seen the movie Hannah?
Yes,
It's called Hannah.
Yes, I have. Yeah, that's
with Saoirse Ronan. Sosha. Her name is
I
complicated.
don't know,
Let's
but
not get
she's
into
a
that.
really cool little girl assassin, and her name's Hannah. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty
That's
basic
awesome.
name for someone who's really awesome. So you can definitely do it.
So basic.
I like the name, but it's not like, I think if she had a really exotic name, I'd be like, meh. Like, it wouldn't
Yeah.
make it cooler. I think it's kind of cool her name was just Hannah. She's
Mhm.
just a normal girl, except, she's also an assassin.
I mean, there's that.
This was something we talked about before the chat really started, but it relates to all of the names. Like, it's super, super important when you have a lot of characters in your book to make sure that their names don't sound the same. So, like, you don't want to have, like, an Alina and an Eileen or something like that.
I would even say, like, I've heard this advice from other authors before, is like, don't try to not even have characters with the same names. I was doing this, I realized, in one of my series on Wattpad. People said this to me, like, why do all of your characters start with the letter A? And I realized, what a stupid mistake, but I realized what I was doing is just grabbing random names, and it was because I would start at the beginning of the baby.
Too lazy to scroll down.
Oh my god.
Well, it's like, yeah, I would start at the beginning, and I'd find something I liked really early on.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like,
Like,
okay,
all
keep
were
looking.
like,
You gotta
Aaron
close your eyes
Adrian
and just click.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind, because in our pre-chat, Erin was talking about how she had two characters named Emma and Eliza, which don't sound too similar, but they start and end with the same letters. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen one of those things on like Facebook or something, where it's like a paragraph and all the words are jumbled, but the first and last letters of every word are the same, and you can read it. So yeah, like we read that way, like we read first and last letters. That's the first thing we see, and particularly if your readers are reading fast, that'll get really confusing. So yeah, try not to have the same first and last letter.
Yeah,
You can have the same first letter or the same last letter, but try not to do both.
Yeah. When I studied linguistics in college, that's what I have my bachelor's degree in. And in that, I learned that when you're reading, your brain is already processing up to 8 words ahead of where you actually are.
Really?
And so your brain is working really fast to get you prepped when you're fluent in the language.
Your brain is such a cool thing. I love hearing
Brain
it
needs
like
to
that.
chill.
So awesome.
That's why, like, when you're
up
reading
there.
really fast, you have to, like, cover up what happens next because you don't want
Yes,
to.
that's
Yes.
so
That would
true.
explain
I do that too.
I didn't even think about that. And I also have to make myself not skip down a couple of like sentences.
Because it's like, I don't need to know what happens in this sentence.
Too funny.
Oh, man.
We have a question. I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this. It's from Rose. Is it easier to create your profile for your characters if you know how many people you want, or should you limit yourself? I'm not quite sure.
That's a good question. So what I'm getting from this question is that it's like, should you state from the beginning, like, I want to only have 5 major characters, or should you, like...
I think I would make up my mind before I went into it, even if I have pants and plotted before. I think even when I was trying to be a pantser, I had like an idea of how many main characters I would have.
Yeah, definitely main
Side characters.
Especially I think like the cast of characters can fluctuate. Like, what's the series? The Delirium series. The second book in that series, like, suddenly there was an influx of characters. And there was also like a draw, like there were a lot. Was it the second or third one? The one where she was living with Raven. Was that the second one?
That was the second one.
Do you know, like, there were a lot of characters, and then there were less characters, and then there were more and less, and it kind of like but it was always the main character was this character with this one on the side and maybe this one over here. So you knew who the main characters were, but the other ones came in.
Different situations in your book or your series are going to demand for more characters to be around. Like if your characters if your character's in high school and they only ever interact with like 2 people in the whole in any scene that they're at school, that's not realistic. There's a lot more people in the school than that, you know.
There's nobody else in school. It's a school
no one else. no one else answers any questions in their class except those 2 people.
Like a cartoon, everybody else is frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I definitely agree with you guys. I am a really hardcore plotter. But my most recent manuscript, I decided to take a whirl at pantsing, and I learned it wasn't really great for me. But in doing that, it was really interesting to see sometimes characters, they show up and they just beg to be put on the page, and so you have to be open to if you do decide, oh, these are going to be my 4 main characters, but someone pops up and is like, I'm a star! Don't feel like you can't put them in your novel.
Yeah, even as a hardcore plotter, I don't think I would sit down and be like, okay, I need these 5 characters, who are they going to be? I would rather start off with 2 and then just work from there, because you never know, you think, a perfect example is in my current writing, I got halfway through writing and I'm like, something just feels weird. I feel like she needs to have an uncle that's really present, so I went back through and wrote an uncle into it, because I had this amazing scene idea at the end, but it involved her having an uncle. I was like, and I can't just have an uncle pop up out of nowhere. So, I mean,
I'm in town now.
Yeah. And I think also
open to change.
On the other side of that, if you start yourself being like, oh, I have these 4 major characters, and then you start writing and realize one of them isn't really necessary, and their attributes can be combined into another person, then get rid of them,
And that means cut them. You don't have to kill them off in your story.
Or
You can combine them into one.
Yeah.
That actually happened to me in my most recent novel that I am 3 days from being finished with revisions for, and I'm so excited. But I wanted the love interest to come into the story later. That was really important to me, that you couldn't just pick up the book and be like, oh, he's the love interest. But I went through in revisions and realized oh, I have this sister here, and she does nothing except for hold his place until he comes into the story. And so it was super hard because I really liked the character, but I had to just take her out. She didn't serve a purpose except to take up space until the real character I wanted to be there could come.
And sometimes it's sort of the opposite. Occasionally it will be sort of a character in the background, and then you're writing about that character more and more. Sort of like Megan said, it's I'm a star, pick me. Yeah. And then that happened in the Emmeline one, is that there was Eliza was originally really this in the background sort of character, but then she kept having more and more to say, so I'm okay, she needs to be main character, obviously. So you can go back and write in more of them.
Yeah, it's
and you can also
you
can also even if you don't want to cut the character completely, they can just be someone who's in the background of the story. Maybe they don't need to be at the forefront because they don't serve a big enough purpose, but maybe the character has a sister that's just not a part of the action that exists.
Right.
Sometimes there's people who exist who aren't involved in something.
Yeah. For sure, but you also do need, and I this is exactly the problem I had. I had this character that was on the line, which was Eliza, of being a main, really vibrant character and a background character, and they can't walk this weird
they need to be one
tightrope in between. They need to be one or the other, or the reader's should I be concerned about this character? Do I care about this character? What's going on, right? So
also, it is important to note that when you're deciding if they're going to be a main character or just a background character or somewhere in between, don't make them a convenient background character that's there to point out hey, isn't this plot point?
Yeah.
Or didn't we just plot point?
That's one of the biggest problems that I see when I'm reading manuscripts for my internship, is that like the main character sits there and these useless secondary characters just come up and say, "Did you notice?"
Out to them.
And like take bullets for them and stuff. And the main character is just sitting there letting it all happen to him or her.
Yeah. Also, like, go ahead.
It's like Aaron's walking the line characters. Like they can't just be like in the background, but then when you need them, suddenly they show up for something, and then they're back in the background, and then they show up to like complete plot points.
They're Scooby-Doo characters.
Yeah. Exactly.
They just show up when the character needs them. Like.
Yeah.
We've got a couple. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I read a lot for the contests that I do on Wattpad, and I see that a lot with people who are just starting out writing, is that they want to make a certain point about their character. Like they want to be like, I want the reader to know that my character is plucky and a strong female. And then they've got this secondary character that comes up and starts crap with the character or something. But it's only there for the purpose of showing how strong this female character is. Right, you know what I mean? And they vanish in the background and never come back, and I'm like,
how
that behavior was so random. Yeah, I see that a lot. They need to have a purpose and a reason, and not just like lash out randomly at the
They need to be full characters that are thought out, even if they're only on like in your book for a page or a sentence.
And their behavior needs to be logical and not just an offshoot of what you're doing, so that you can show how cool your character is. There needs to be a reason for them. Yeah.
Or I noticed this too in my book, that some of the characters, they show up to help further the plot. And that's a really hard one, because like when you do plot or when you have an idea of where you want it to go, it's really easy to box your characters into doing things that you want them to do when it's not the most logical thing. So you have to be like realistic when you look at it.
I realized I did this in the worst possible way in the manuscript I'm working on now, because, and actually one of my readers told me this, because I had a background character, and she's very background. She's very in the background. And at the end, she comes in and saves everyone. And my reader was like, no, like, you're making to save everyone. Because this is almost like, how do you pronounce the Deus Ex Machina or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, she just comes in and saves the day, but what about the main character saving the day? You know, so... Yeah, that was my mistake.
If your main character doesn't save the day, you need to rewrite your end.
Yeah, maybe it's not a main character. All right, we've got some questions. This one is from Jordan. What would you say is the limit of point of view characters? In my dystopian novel, I've got 4 point of view characters, but each of them are writing in different formats. So one's writing letters, another's writing a diary, etc.
Cool.
Do you think this stops any confusion upon who is who? Also, one character is Andromeda and the other's Andromeda. Are they too similar? They're similar, but
that sounds confusing to me. But
isn't that based on mythology, though? If I remember, Andromeda and Andromeda.
You give them nicknames.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
Also, if they're related, I feel like that also gives an excuse for names to sound similar.
That's great. It all depends on how your readers react, is what I would say. If your readers read it and they have no trouble with it, then go for it. But if they tell you they're confused, you gotta do something. Like Megan said, nickname them. That's a great idea.
And as for point of view characters, how many do we think is?
I think 4 is okay, personally. I think read that done really well.
I think that 4 can be okay if
point of view characters.
It's done very well. Like I think the way you've got it going, where there's letters and stuff, is really interesting, and it'd be really easy to follow. But I also know that having multiple point of view characters can make it difficult to make things weave into the climax really well. So if you feel really confident about that, then I feel like, go for it.
Also, you have to make sure all the characters are really, really, really interesting, because I will know that, like, when I read different point of view books, like with 3 different characters telling point of view stories, I tend to favor usually 1 or 2, and then there's this one that I'm like, oh, we're reading from you again.
Read them again.
Like, I can't skip it, but what if there's something important? I gotta read it.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah.
I would definitely say, like, if you're like more of a beginning writer and it's one of your first few books, then or manuscripts, then you should probably keep the points of view lower. Like, I feel like you really need to like have a lot of experience before
it's hard
to do that well.
And also,
I think it's practice, like.
I mean, I think it's hard to juggle 2 characters, to be honest. For me, like, you have to make them so distinctive, and their personalities have to be completely different. But like alike enough to mesh well. I think I think 3 would be the easiest for me as a reader to juggle. I think 4, again, if done right, you can push it. I know that George R.R. Martin does I think they're in first person, or not in first person. Each chapter is a specific character, and then like
I think that's the distinction is when it's in third person, you get
can
that
do more.
distance. It's easier to jump around to like a bunch of different characters because
Like
you're
in the
not
Diviners.
I was gonna say the Diviners.
Diviners did it really well.
Well, and if you're trying to do a lot of characters in first person, you have to have a really, really distinct voice for every single one of them, and that's harder to do than third person.
I wouldn't try it.
Would not, nope.
The Daughter of Smoke and Bone, the series, I know the second one jumps around between the two characters, but also like it pops in the head of different characters that aren't the main two that we focus on. And again, I think that was also told in third person, which is why it might have been so successful. Point of view, when you're doing the different point of views from characters, you do have to consider what point of view you're writing in for them.
You guys ever read this one? The Unnaturalists? You guys hear about that?
It's a really cool cover.
Isn't it an awesome cover? I love it. And actually, she's she looks like Japanese or something, and I love that. That's why one of the reasons I bought it is steampunk, and also because it's like multicultural cover, which I rarely see. But I found it very weird because she does a two-person point of view, but one of them is in first person, and the other one's in second person.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it was really weird.
It is weird by itself.
Second person.
Yeah, second person is jarring.
Oh, sorry, no. Sorry, third person. Jesus.
Okay.
Okay.
Person was in
Got
third
off the
person.
rails.
Lord, no. But I found that really jarring, switching between first person and third person, and I'd never seen it done before. So I don't know. I was up in the air.
I feel like I'm remembering this correctly, that Stephen King, it didn't jump around, but he wrote a book that went from first person to third person towards the end. So I don't know. I think there was a recent book, because I remember seeing somebody like, oh, I picked this book up specifically to see how that worked.
Yeah.
Did it get good reviews? I don't know if I like that.
It could be, like, I'm trying to think, it could be really cool because that's like kind of a zooming out of the character. So you kind of get distance. And Stephen King, I'm assuming it's a horror story.
Yeah.
So maybe by the end you like witness it instead of experience it. And you're just like that bystander.
I actually just I liked the plot and the characters and everything in this book, but I did find it really jarring to switch between the two.
So how do you guys decide when a character needs to be a point of view character? Like, if you've already got one, how do you decide if there's another one who needs to have the same?
For me, I know I went back and forth in the book that I'm writing now. It was one point of view, and then I switched to 2 point of views, and then now I went back to 1 point of view because I couldn't handle the 2 point of views. But I attempted to do 2 point of views when I started seeing scenes from the second main character's point of view. So, like, he was doing things by himself without the main character. And I was like, I really like that. I wonder if I can handle that myself.
Yeah.
I didn't.
For me, I think it's when a secondary character who's not the main character starts, kind of like Kaylin says, doing stuff on their own that is significant to the plot, but they're not with the main character. Like, for Insight, I'm writing it in Penn's point of view and Az's point of view because...
Which I'm so excited for.
It's hard to write, let me tell you. Some characters are the worst. They are not cooperative, but...
He's not cooperative in the book either.
He is not, so it is to be expected. But with the way with how Ignite ended, the two characters, spoiler alert for my book, they're separated and they're going to be kind of at odds, and something big is going to happen between them. So they're both planning different things, and I want to see what he's planning because it's significant. But also, she's the main character still. It's I think it's sometimes you just know when you have to have a point of view character. It just feels like they need more of the story
for the
told.
plot. Sometimes you need like the perspective. Like that character needs their story told or their perspective told. And like the important thing I think to remember is that you can try writing it in another character's point of view, and like you don't have to stick with it if you decide it doesn't work. Like it's not like you like have to be like, I'm gonna write this from 2 characters' points of view, and if I do this, I'm stuck and I can't change back. Like if you decide no, this isn't working, like Kaylin was saying, I think it was Kaylin, somebody. Like if it's not working, then you can go back to just doing one character's point of view.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, as funny as the story I'm writing now, it was sort of similar to Erica. Like my other character it's actually plotting against the main character and trying to like expose this big secret she has. So I want people to see what's going on behind the scenes, so they're worried about the main character.
Yeah, for insight, like the 2 point of views, it's definitely going to build tension because they're both kind of building this army to go and fight, and like you're seeing what's happening over here, and they think this is happening over there when really it's something completely different, and you're kind of like,
and when the reader knows there's like more tension built up, and there wouldn't be that tension if it was just the one character. So
part of me, I kind of wish that I wrote part of it night through Az's point of view, because I think I missed a chance to do more stuff, but it's done. So
Jennifer Matthews' The Truth About Alice, which I really want to read. It sounds amazing. It has like 4 or 5 point of view characters.
Wow.
And it's basically like there's a rumor started about Alice. Yeah. There's a rumor started about Alice that she slept with 2 boys in one night. And,
you were telling us about this.
Yeah, so you're jumping, every point of view character is telling you the story of what really happened to Alice. And then the very last chapter is from Alice's point of view. And I really want to read it.
I like that.
So you should check that out to see how she does it.
Wow, that sounds really intense.
We've got another question/suggestion, which I agree with. This is from, let's try this, Vivi Loana. Close. Before I start writing, I make short bios of my main characters with physical characteristics, history, and main traits. The others I'll add as needed, and in some cases I'll delete some or make others more prominent. Which I would suggest, I sometimes forget what my main characters look like, so if you have a big cast of characters, jot down physical attributes and like personality, and like just, you need to know who they are and remember. If you've gone a while from talking about them, you don't want to be inconsistent.
Yeah, in addition to that, though, like when you make the character sketches, I actually read something earlier that was in your character sketches. If you have a large cast, it'll help if you write the relationship between all of the characters, whether, you know, the status of the relationship, not like, oh, this is the brother, this is his sister. This is like, okay, this character does not like this character because. And that helps you see both A, a pattern in all of your characters, and B, it just keeps everything close to you.
I did that in my last manuscript. And I had like 20 big characters or something, or 20 characters who were all in this city who played a major role in the city. And so I had like 40 pages of notes on these characters and how they knew each other and their backstory and stuff. And it felt so cool to be writing, having known that much about all the characters. So I definitely agree with that.
It can also be useful if you're coming up with these characters and you have a voice in mind for them. Like write a sentence or a paragraph or something in their voice so that you remember exactly what they sound like when you get to them. Just like I know when I'm writing, well, just in regular life, I don't have the best memory. So detailed character development is always helpful. It's never going to hurt. And the question she had was, do you guys have a limit on characters or just go with what is needed? Also, how to work on making people care about so many characters, which is a good one. How do we make them care? Make them real, I think.
Yeah.
Is the best.
Let them have like their own story and their own like desires and goals, even if they're not explicitly stated. If you know what they are and if you let that guide the characters, then that'll help a lot. Because then, you feel like they're real and not just someone who's there to help the main character, like we were talking about.
One of the things I really like to do is when I am in the plotting phases or I'm getting a feel for who my big characters are going to be, I like to write down what they want from the main character. Because every secondary character that you have is there for a reason, and they want something from your main character, even if it's just they want a friend. Like, they want something. And it's really good to know because I feel like that really helps drive the character to do things
not even just from the main character, but they definitely
just what they want in life.
Yeah, what they want in life, what's their motivation within what they're doing. Like, are they the main character's best friend? In that case, they are probably motivated by loyalty or love for their friend. Or if they're the enemy, why are they enemies? What are they motivated by?
Yeah. What makes the villain tick?
And I think there's gonna be some characters that like aren't like best friends and family and totally on their side and aren't villains either. Like it's annoying in a way, but also necessary when you're like reading and there's a character that your main character needs them to help with something and they don't want to help. And like it'd be frustrating to read. So I think sometimes when you're writing, you're like, oh yeah, everyone that they ask for help, I want them to agree to help them because they're not the villain, they're not a bad guy, so they should help them. But, like, you have to do that for tension and to drive the plot and to make the characters real because people aren't just going to be like, sure, I'll do whatever you need. Like, they have their own agenda in it, and they'll maybe say, like, well, I could help you with that, but it will, like, hurt what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Or
it'll
take
Ron, Hermione,
with the time of what I
fought.
need to do.
Yeah, we like all of them, but they always fought, so it's fun. Tension is good.
Yeah, and the characters have something that is important to them. Like Erica was saying, Hermione and Harry and Ron always fought because Harry and Ron wanted her to do stuff that she's not supposed to do. And she's very concerned about her grades and how she looks and her reputation, in the scholarly reputation, right? So that's her own goals and hopes and dreams that maybe sometimes are a little bit above what Harry and Ron want to do, right? And that's where the tension comes in and the yelling at each other.
Or worse,
And
spelled.
as far as numbers go, like I don't choose like a limit. I don't say like, well, there can only be
10, no more than 10.
10.
Yeah, I just kind of let it happen.
I don't think setting a number is important. Make sure that all the characters that you refer to by name we can remember and are significant to the story. Otherwise, just like it's a group of people. So for name-specific important characters, make sure that they have something significant in the story that warrants us trying to memorize their name. Because I know if there's too many characters, I'm going to start giving up. I'm going to say,
For sure. And actually, that brings something to mind that I see over and over again as well in beta reading and stuff, is when your character walks into a room and there's a group of people, you do not have to describe
everyone.
No, just like it's a crowd of people. And if there's a couple of characters that are coming into the story later and that you will repeatedly see or be friends with eventually, then you can do a quick 1 or 2 details of what they look like. But I've seen like laundry list descriptions of the entire crowd.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot too, and I think the best way to combat that is find one thing about each of your character that is just descriptive of them, and it doesn't have to be a physical appearance. It could be like the way they stand, like for the Patrick Press anthology, which comes out Tuesday, by the way. We were doing background for the character who created this magical locket, and the first description I came up with was, he's a man of stacked bones. He looks as rickety as his old shack. And that's his defining characteristic. So it's not like he had this color eyes, and this color was his skin, and his hair was like this, and he had a missing tooth here. It was like, detail is good, but sometimes specific small details, like he was a stack of bones. You can see that.
Like,
he's an old man.
And if you for the sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like with holding the details is fine. Like walking into a room, if there's like 3 people sitting on the couch, you can be like Emma, Erica, and Aaron, which I'll start with E's. Don't do that.
Oh no.
On the couch. Later in the scene, Erica walks up, and then you can be like Erica walks up, and you can mention the pink hair. So it's not like you have to be like, these 3 people were sitting on the couch, and these are 3 characteristics of the people. Just acknowledge that they're in the room if they come back later. But going off on something Aaron said earlier, which I think, yes, definitely don't introduce everyone at once, because then that's just a huge cluster of. I think what worked really well in Harry Potter, and I understand that it can't happen in every book, is that we learned who these people were through Harry Potter. So, like, even though it was in third person, we actually learned all of the professors, all of the students, all of his friends, the people we hated, the people we loved, through him. So that was easier way to go about it.
Also, if you just introduce everybody at once, it's like an info dump, and it can be over.
Jack.
You ran into every single thing in this room on the way to the door, so it was just. Whew. It's hot in here. We have a few more questions. I'm trying to see what are questions and comments. Mystery Girl says, in terms of main characters, one thing she liked about in the Gem trilogy, which I don't know what that is that in the back there's actually a list of all the main characters and who they are, and it's organized into categories. I'd be iffy on that, though, because I feel like if you have to make a list of characters, it might be too much.
Too many characters. There's a lot of books with lists of characters in the back, though.
It makes sense with
epic
like family
fantasy.
trees. Yeah, it makes sense.
It
with
makes sense
family
if you're
trees,
writing like a big like high fantasy, epic fantasy type thing.
Yeah.
With lots of characters, and they have family members who maybe aren't important, but like they pass by in the story. Just so, because I know for things like epic fantasy and high fantasy, like fans like to know about all these things. You know, they want to know all the information.
It's much more involved. This question's from Rose. If you want to write stories with your characters based on your real friends, how do you go about this without being too obvious? Simple answer is don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Never. Don't.
Yeah. There was a huge thing
to
going on with
muddy
Harry
water.
Potter. J.K. Rowling, who was it? An uncle or a cousin who was like, this character is exactly like me. And she was like, no, it's not, I promise.
And here's the thing.
So many people said that, though.
Yeah.
Like her
everybody's gonna
editor was
think
like,
you're writing about.
even one of her editors was like, the last person in the Harry Potter book was clearly me. And I'm like, yeah, no.
Okay.
You're weird.
And Harry Potter was based on me. She totally just saw a relationship. She's like, I'm going to write about it. I was like, please don't. This is personal information I'm sharing with you. But yeah, I would never, ever suggest basing characters on people. You can take an attribute from a person. Like my sister is really sarcastic and sometimes very inappropriate at the most, again, inappropriate times. So I took part of that and I put it in other characters. Like a bit of Az is inspired by that tendency that she has.
See, that's the key word there, though. Inspired is very good.
Like an
based
aspect
on.
of a friend's personality can inspire a character, but you don't want like everything about your friend to inspire a character.
Because you do not want people recognizing themselves in books because that can get too soon.
You also, you don't want to base somebody, like a character, on a real person because you get this chance to create someone who doesn't exist. And, you know, I don't know. I always hate when people just base it completely on another person. And to be frank, no matter who you write, someone's going to come up to you and be like, is this me?
Yeah.
Did you read about it? It's like, no, but sure.
Yeah, and there's also like, you know, yes, you'd be using all the like good things that you like about your friend in this character, but you're also going to have to use like the things that annoy you in the bad because you can't have a perfect character. And so then if a friend can tell it themselves from the good things, then they're going to know like the bad things, and you don't want to do that to a relationship with someone. Or if you like. If you kill off a character, you don't want your friend to be offended.
Exactly.
You know?
And you really don't want to like purposely do that because, like we said before, you're gonna have people accusing you of that regardless, even when you don't
want to start a trend.
Exactly.
And then be like, but this book you based on this person, so.
And people are already gonna say like, well, you obviously made this main character like yourself. Like that happens all the time already. So.
It's dangerous to do that. So. I think across the board, unanimously, we would recommend save yourself. Save yourself in your relationship with your friends and just don't do it. Let's see. This one's a short question, so I'll get to this one before we get to Wendy, because Wendy is here, so I'm getting to you, Wendy. This is from Mystery. Oh, this is just a response to the trilogy. It's categorized into family trees, that the Gem.
See, that's cool. I sometimes do enjoy looking through the family trees, and I don't know.
It's like as long as I don't need it, you know. Like if it's like I have to go look at this to figure out who all these people are, but it's like fun if you can like look at it and be like, oh, that's how they're connected.
Megan, say something out loud.
No, your sound is not working.
Were we talking over you a lot?
Oh no!
Oh, there you are. No, that's Erin. Never mind.
Sorry.
I thought.
Yeah. We don't have any voice from Megan.
No. She's gonna work on it.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Emma. On the side, just in case it working. Oh, there you go.
Okay, I changed my microphone. This one's failing me.
Emma, what were you saying?
Oh, yeah, I was just saying, like, as long as the background information is, or if, like, having the characters' names and who they are in the back isn't necessary to the story, like, if I'm having to flip to the back and be like, who is this person again, that's a problem. But if it's, like, supplemental information, that's cool. To be like, oh, those people were, like, related in this way, and I didn't even know that. You know, like, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we shouldn't have to be paging to the back and being like, who's this person again?
And that's why I call, like, if you know it's too many characters, when you do have to do that, again, the Breaking Dawn effect, where, like, 50 new characters are introduced, and they have complicated names and different powers. I'm like, I can't memorize you guys. It's not worth it.
Particularly in, like, a standalone book. Or where, like, this is the last book. You're never going to see these people again, so why would you care?
Why am I going to go through all this effort to memorize all of these people? I have a problem memorizing real life people.
Yeah. What are your guys' names?
Kaylin? Is it Caitlin? Kaylin? I know it's
Lots of E's.
Yeah, you're the pink hair, right? Aaron? Isn't that your name?
Now everybody's just like the pink one. That's Wendy's comment was just that she's writing a second book in her plot. There were 10 characters who were traveling, and the group kept growing larger because she's like, well, I need someone to do this and this and this. A solution for that, so your characters don't become like a horde instead of a group, is maybe make some of the characters through revisions be able to do some of the things that you need, like someone who's proficient in healing, or you mentioned repairing armor and weapons, or like a character can learn that. So it's not like 50 people.
Also, like, an interesting way to add conflict is if there isn't someone there who knows how to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Or if they're really bad at it. They're bad at it, I think they're good.
Or they can stop somewhere, like, I don't know, maybe there's no towns nearby, but they could stop somewhere, visit the local blacksmiths, and move on. They don't have to take the...
I was just thinking that. I was like, the first thing I thought about the armor was like, well, you could always visit, like, a place to get it done. It doesn't have to be a specific character there whose sole purpose is there to fix the armor. When there's a shop down the road that could do it, and you just have to introduce the storekeeper, and then like...
Unless the plot requires that there's a main character. Yeah. I guess there could maybe be something
Think of it like a video game. Think of how many characters are involved in a video game as main characters versus the ones that you pass by to, like, we need this from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So who's got a large cast of characters going on soon or now? Anybody?
Soon. Actually,
now. Coming up. I've got 2 coming up.
It's a pain. It's a real pain figuring out which ones actually have to be there and which ones I can cut. It's so hard.
How many do you guys have? What do you think is large?
I think anything over 3 significant characters that I have to, that are constantly in, are large.
Right, okay.
I have like
3.
10 main characters?
10 major characters, because they like leave and they go to this new place, and there's like that whole group of people.
Right.
I've got about 8.
Like all of those people are important.
I think mine will be like 6, because I've got the main character, the guy who's trying to expose her, and then she joins this like group of ghost hunters, and I think there has to be at least 4 of them.
Ghost hunters!
It's the only watching 30th anniversary.
Only watching Ghost Facers from Supernatural. Ghost Facers!
Yeah, no, and inside I have 8 characters that are significant. And then I also have a retelling of Robin Hood coming up. So all of the merry men.
One?
Yeah, that's a gender-based lesbian Robin Hood, which is, Kelly wants me to write it next, so it might be coming sooner.
Do it.
But the merry men, or in this case, probably merry women, are going to be a large cast of characters that I have to handle.
I think my current, I have 8. 3 of them are like forefront and center. Well, actually, it's like 8.5. But I'm feeling with that to where, you know, they find out something's wrong with them, and then they also find out, hey, there's something wrong with other people too. Let's band together and do it like at the same time.
Did you say 8.5?
8.5.
You have a half?
8.5. No, like the brother plays
Just
kind
the
of
left half.
in later books, so I have him in there a lot now.
Oh, okay.
So like he's like that little half straggler to where he's a sub character, but he's kind of. But like there's only 3 characters that are like pivotal. The other characters only do stuff, but I think 3 is a good number. I keep saying 3 whenever I think about anything.
It does work in groups of 3s. Like I only like reading when it's dual point of views. Really, 3 is as much as I can handle, especially if it's in first person. That's a lot. And
yeah, well,
3 main characters or 3. It's a 3-act structure. Just
mine is in third person, but I don't think I need to go like from all the different points of view. I just think the guy and the girl, and then the other ghost hunting team can just be their main characters, but I don't think I need their point of view.
Yeah.
Well, mine is only in first point of view with one person, so like the main point of view is through the main girl, but there's also 2 other characters that are always around
with her.
And I think that's important, knowing that like yes, you do have this big cast of characters, but they cannot and should not all have
their own
point of view. Like they'll have their own personal point of views, but we don't have to read from that. In fact, it's better if we don't read from that. Holding back is good.
Well, it's like sort of like Harry Potter. Mainly, it was narrated from his point of view, but there's a huge cast of characters. Although occasionally, we'd see something from, it would be narrated almost from Snape's point of view, or like. I don't think so. Not Snape. There was one that was like the bad guys. We saw what was happening with the bad guys.
Yeah, like the Harry goes into Voldemort's mind.
It was like the first chapter. The first chapter of a few books.
Like the first chapter of Goblet of Fire was through an old man's perspective.
The last like 5 books.
Like the caretaker guy when he got killed by Nagini.
Yeah, the caretaker. That was the 4th book.
Yeah, like that was very brief, but it was very interesting because you got to see what's going on.
I always skip that one now. I'm like, I don't got time for you.
That one took the longest to read.
That also works in a way because doesn't Harry wake up as a nightmare to that because he sees through Nagini's eyes, so it's still tied together. But it didn't feel like it was.
Yeah. Or actually, Erin, I think the 7th one starts with Snape when he's like at the Malfoy Manor.
Yeah.
You're right.
And they do the unbreakable vow.
Yeah, the 6th one is when Narcissa and Bellatrix go to his house. So you get that.
I know that one of the last ones also had like that political. The Minister of Magic came to visit the Prime Minister. I think it was maybe the 6th.
Is that the 6th? Yeah.
I think it was the 6th one. And I was like, all right,
my favorite.
I want to see Harry. I don't want to read any of this political stuff. I just want to see
I love that.
That was my favorite part. I love stuff like that too. I actually love seeing from other people's point of views, especially if they're not familiar with the magic or whatever's going on in that world. It's shock to them.
I think why it works so well is because we were really in Harry's head for the entire time. So
I was just gonna say that
we're not tired of being dragged around to different characters, but you still, and this is important, even though we're from Harry's perspective, we still know what other people are thinking, what their motivations are, what they're doing, what their other life is.
Without J.K. Rowling like telling us.
And it's the same reason. It's the same reason everybody's gonna flock to these new movies that are gonna come out that are prequel. Harry was ever even thought of. Because it's J.K. Rowling, it's the same universe. We are so into this series and that universe that we'll read just about anything. I will read just about anything.
And I was going to say, I think like the important thing to realize with those few chapters she did that were from other people's points of view, they were always just like the first chapter. Like it wasn't just like halfway through the book you randomly had a chapter.
It wasn't random.
It's not jarring. And I think
the only time
taken as a prologue.
The only time you got that was halfway through like, it's the 4th one, the Goblet of Fire. Harry, but it's when Harry like falls asleep in divination and he sees through Voldemort's eyes, so that doesn't really count because it's still Harry. But it wasn't like in the middle of the book we suddenly get Snape's point of view or we get this like meeting with the 2 ministers. It was always at the beginning, so you weren't drawn.
The type of stuff, it still baffles my mind, the type of stuff that J.K. Rowling did and got away with because she was so good at it. Like the thing with when he sees from what happened. It's a flashback, but it's not a flashback because Harry's gone into this weird mirror water thing.
And he's like there.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I just can't wrap my mind around the stuff this woman did. Like it just.
It's like whenever I see people be like, whenever I see people be like, I love the Harry Potter books, but I've never been that impressed with her writing. I'm like, really? I'm very impressed.
I don't need you in my life. Get out.
When people feel the need to say that, I'm like, are you just trying to prove that, like, yes, I love these children's books, but I'm above this.
But I'm going to be snooty about it.
But the whole, this is popular, so I'm going to find something to not like about it.
Also,
just
also the fact that, because I've seen like 2 people say this before. One was like an article I read, and one was actually someone I know. But like, yeah, and they're always like, I was never impressed. I'm like, oh really? When you were 12 years old, you weren't impressed with this writing?
My 12-year-old self, I could do so much better than this.
Yeah, and also I'm like, are you like such an amazing writer? Like, I don't understand.
I still think like I would never say that I'm not impressed by her writing, because I am.
Yeah.
But technically speaking, the sentence structure and the actual writing it's simple, but that's why I love it. But
and also it's a children's book. That's what it gets me when people say that. I'm like, it's not like she was writing like this adult, like, great American novel or something.
But the thing that's really complex is her plotting and her story structure.
And that's what's so impressive, is that she's able to write this complex story that's so
simple language,
multifaceted, and it's just it's clean and it's simple and it's just like, I mean, clean is really the word to describe it.
And it's also like witty at the same time. Like, her writing is very witty.
Let's just fangirl about J.K. Rowling for the next.
She is a good writer.
Related to large cast of characters, though. This is something I struggle with that I think J.K. Rowling does really well. When there's big action scenes, like there are often in Harry Potter where lots of people are fighting, I always feel this temptation to be like, and Rhea was over here doing this, and Elle was doing this, and Beth was doing this, and this so-and-so is doing this. But like in an action sequence, you're not going to be seeing everyone and everything all at once. So even if you do have a large cast, they don't all have to be on your character's mind for every second of every part of the story.
Right. No, it's funny that you said that, because I just got done reading This Is Not a Test by Courtney Summers, and there was a scene where like the characters are arguing, and the character said something specific, and just in my head I imagined the character was holding a gun. I imagined him like holding it up and pointing in the direction, and like as I'm imagining that, I read the description and it says that he's pointing the gun. So it's like, if you do a really good job with the character's personality and how you portray that, we'll see what we need to see, in that background.
And it's funny that you were talking about battle scenes, Megan, because that's actually something that I really struggled with while I was writing Frost and stuff, is just that you've got such a huge, especially if you have, like Lord of the Rings or something, massive armies going against each other, and you've got a lot of characters you've been following up till then, same with like Robert Jordan and stuff. You've got like 10 or 20 characters you've been following, and then they're all in the same like massive army setting. It's really hard. You don't want to bounce too much around the battlefield, but maybe have a couple of points of view switches to see what's going on.
That's why I think you definitely need to like do like points of view like a chapter at a time, Because it's really confusing. I see it a lot in like, if you're reading like fan fiction or stuff that people have just posted on like Wattpad or Fiction Press or something, and it hasn't really been like refined yet, that they'll just have like throughout the story, like every other paragraph, it's just like switching between
tons of head hopping,
and that's really confusing. Like, confine it to chapters or sections or scenes.
At least have paragraph breaks at the very least.
And so like just focus on like what would be drawing this character's eye. Like, are they going to notice like the person that they care about the most, or are they going to be distracted by this loud noise over here? Like, they're not just going to be, they're fighting, so they're not going to be just like looking around and like, oh, what's everyone doing?
What's going on? This is such a cool war.
I think that's the one thing that kind of caught me off with the diviners in the beginning, was the jumps. Like, they weren't separated by chapters. There was like jumps, and it took me like I think 3 chapters to get into that flow. But like once you get into the flow, I wanted to keep reading, so it wasn't like I switched, to
and what's that called, you guys?
I want to read this character right now.
Omniscient.
Omniscient? Yes, thank you. Omniscient. That's a writing technique, and actually something that I thought Liv O'Bray is quite good at.
Yes.
Liv O'Bray is like a goddess.
Liv O'Bray is just a genius. Let's just
words.
Everything is.
For most people, Omniscient is very hard to write.
Especially if you're new, stay away from that. I don't do it. I don't go anywhere near it.
I've like read stuff before. Like it's like he'll change like within one paragraph, like different sentences, and I'm like, no.
It doesn't
I don't
work
know
because it's
who
so
is talking right now.
disconcerting. You're like jerked from this character to that character, and it's just
I don't know who to
it's
love.
exhausting to read.
Yeah.
But if you want a suggestion of how to do it well, just read Libba Bray. Just like, just even if you don't want a suggestion, just read everything by Libba Bray. I can recommend all of it.
And she does some great YouTube stuff too. So
she is hilarious.
She's good at everything.
That woman makes me snort tea out of my nose regularly. It's really funny on YouTube.
I love her.
I suggest it strongly.
Few more comments. These are basically the same, so I'm combining them. This is from Jordan and Wendy. How do you go about maintaining a large group? Wendy's is specific to a large group of male characters. Jordan wanted to know, she's got a group of rebellion warlocks who are rising up in her story, but in the center of this giant group is like the main 3 characters. Is that enough, or do I have to define all of them as characters? She's worried about having a bunch of nameless characters. Don't worry about that. If it's a huge rebellion, we don't need to know everybody, just the key players. Like, we don't know everybody in the Hunger Games rebellion, but we know the important people. Pick and choose.
Like at school, like you might recognize people's faces at school, and you're like all doing kind of the same thing together, but it doesn't mean you were like friends with every single person and spoke to every single person.
A lot of the time,
Or
too, I noticed in books like reading Crown of Midnight, Selene goes up against this guard, like a bunch of guards, and a lot of the time what authors do is they don't name the character, and because it doesn't matter, because she's going to kill him like in the next book or whatever, right? It doesn't matter, he doesn't need a name. So the whole time she just calls him the tall guard or the burly guard or whatever. Just pick a characteristic, and the character sort of nicknames them in their head. You know, it's like the first time you meet somebody and you can't remember the name, you're just, oh yeah, that tall guy, you know? The character doesn't need to name them. They just need a characteristic so the reader knows who.
And most of the time they won't even, A, they won't even know their name, or B, they might not remember their name because
exactly.
they might be meeting a lot of people. Or they might just be a terrible person like me who never memorizes anybody's name and then is very rude in public when I'm like, yeah, you.
Hey, you. How are you doing?
You look great.
It's got to be a writer thing because that's the same with me.
There are too many people living in my head that I can't. I have no room for real life.
I can't keep
I have no room for actual people. There's too many people.
So true.
We've got a comment. This one's pretty cool. This is from Raw Edge. Hello, I actually found your channel today. Welcome to our channel.
What we like to hear.
I have to say I've never been as impressed as I am now with the live stream. Thank you. You're very complimentary. We love it. My question stems from the other day when I had a discussion with a friend that rides the coattails of this live stream. I got it. There we go. She was telling me how she couldn't understand the point of secondary characters having layers or complexity to them solely because the story doesn't center around said characters. I tried explaining to her why secondary characters are important, and she didn't listen. My question for you all is, what would you have told her if you had been speaking to her, and why secondary characters are so important to the formula of a novel? You know why? Because secondary characters are the main characters in their own story.
Yeah, I would have told her, you're a secondary character to my life.
Sweet burn.
That doesn't mean, like the fact that like your friends are secondary characters to your life.
Let's
but it
have a
doesn't
moment
mean
of silence for that beautiful comeback that
but really, like, your friends and your family and everything are going to be the secondary characters to your own life. Like, you have to think about stories like you would in real life. And those like, your friends are going to be secondary characters, but it doesn't mean that they don't have their own complexity and their own lives and their own desires. And so you want your story to reflect real life, and you want your story to feel real. And that's why it's necessary.
And knowing their background in this three-dimensional picture of them makes everything they do, to you as the author at least, even if we know nothing else of their life, everything is more realistic, and you know what they're going to do in a situation. Whereas if they're just like a character, they're doing anything. You know, like, oh, this is useful for the plot, so let's take them in and just have them held out here.
What they do have to make sense, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh, this is what the main character needed, so it's what they're
Plus, two-dimensional characters are boring.
Yeah, and I also think it's really insulting to your readers. It's underestimating your readers' intelligence if you think you could just shove cardboard characters in the background and the reader isn't going to notice that they have no hopes and goals and dreams and they're just these two-dimensional cardboard cutouts. Your reader's going to be able to tell and not going to be impressed by it.
It's like when you watch a cartoon and it's a big group scene and you see like certain characters defined and then every other character is just like a circle and you're like, buddy.
I think it all comes down to believability. Like, your plot is going to seem forced if you don't have people there who are making it happen.
For sure.
And I don't want to read a story where the plot is forced.
Yeah.
You
want to believe everything, even if it's so crazy unrealistic in this fantasy world, you want to believe that it's possible and that it could happen, and having these realistic characters just goes that much farther in kind of convincing your reader that this is real.
Yeah, I don't want to like read it.
Game.
I don't want to feel like the character who like sells them their coffee at Starbucks in the morning is just a prop who just is like sitting there waiting for the like main character to show up and get coffee. You know, like that they have other things that they're doing before and after the moment where they come into the story.
Yeah. But the thing is also you don't have to like, you know, like I was saying earlier with Crown of Midnight and the Tall Guard. You don't need to plan out the Tall Guard's entire life story. You need to know
it could help.
If you like doing that, knock yourself out. But you don't need to know what the tall guy's childhood was like. You just need to know he's this arrogant, aggressive fool that wants to continue attacking the main character, and he's going to die eventually because he is full of pride and just wants to hack and slash, right? So he's got to have some kind of personality and show that. But like I said, you don't need to plan out.
He's got to have a desire.
Yeah. And again, it's like, we're not advocating fleshing out like crazy every single character.
I mean, thinking it all in the story.
Secondary.
It doesn't all be in the story.
There's primary characters, secondary characters, and then everybody else. The group.
Exactly.
Yeah, and going back to like Harry Potter, because we've talked about that a lot with this. Like, you have to think about like all those secondary characters, all the other kids that are like in Harry's year, or that that he has classes with. Like, they have definite personalities that you get. You know, like you don't just sit there and be like, oh, that random kid. Like, you're like, oh, like Ernie McMillan. Like, you can remember names and you can remember what they were like and what they did because they seemed very real.
And it makes the universe
so real. You
can't
name everybody in Hogwarts. Like that's the difference. Is you know like enough people that it's a realistic world, but you don't know every single person where you're like, this is an encyclopedia of people.
Yeah, but and you know from like things she said about how she wrote the books and how she planned the books that she really did she figured out backgrounds for these characters, and some of the backgrounds never came into the story, but she had them. Or she also she had a list of just like names of like the kids in Hogwarts, so that if she like needed a character to be like to like blow up something in class, she had a name to give the character. You know, that she just like
What's his name? Seamus?
I was gonna say Seamus.
And like her names went through multiple drafts.
Yeah.
So thought on it. 2 other drafts to it. It's like, dang.
Well, see, if nothing else, it's great practice at developing characters. You can never develop a character enough, because even if you don't use it in your story, which I would recommend not using everything you develop about your character in a story, because it's probably not relevant, but it influences everything about them, the way they stand, the way they talk, the way they like think about themselves and dress and approach people. Think about who you are and how things in the past have made you who you are now.
I think group dynamics are also a really big part of like casting and stuff like that, especially in Harry Potter. If we all know Draco, you either love him or you hate him because of his relationship to Harry, because of how he treated Harry and that bicker and that I can't think of the word I'm thinking about now. Tension.
Animosity.
Tension. Yes. But kind of that school dynamic where everyone's learning how to do magic, and everybody does it a different way. Seamus blows something up. Hermione does everything perfect. Like, you have every single type of character in those books, and it's done so well.
We've got this question from Hannah. How do you avoid secondary characters stealing the show? I'm sorry if you can hear my dog snoring in here. Just for the record, that is a dog snoring.
I could go along. I think Megan said this earlier, to where if your main character isn't saving the day, they don't belong your main character. So if your secondary character is trying to steal the show, they maybe don't belong as a secondary character.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm kind of bending those rules in my own writing, so I can't advocate for that completely. I think if it's done well, you can do it and get away with it.
I also think you can have incredibly vibrant, like, secondary characters that are still main characters, but they're not, like, the point of view character. Yeah. Like Ron and Hermione, to go back on the Harry Potter thing, are both such vibrant, like, you might have said, you know, I actually like Ron and Hermione a little better than I like Harry, just because I think they have more personality, to be honest.
Yeah, that's...
But also,
to live through.
Another example is in the Shatter Me series, Kenji is
my gosh. He steals the show every time.
He's so, every time he comes on the page, he's hilarious, but he's also really smart and like surprisingly deep. And I think you're allowed to have a character who steals the show like that when a main character lacks those attributes. Let those shine in a different character. You don't have to make your main character perfect and be all these different things, because you have other people to work with who can do that. Like, Juliet is not funny.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of like, it's understandable a lot of the times when that happens, because like when you think about Harry Potter and why Ron and Hermione were a little bit more likable, is Harry just has like so much pressure put on him that, you know, he's like the chosen one and all this stuff. But, like, he doesn't like get to like be very lighthearted because of like, you know, if he was just like cracking jokes about Voldemort all the time and stuff, it's like, okay, Harry, this is a bit serious, you know.
Like, sure it is.
Are going to die.
Yeah, like because of like how like Harry, you know, like what he's been through and what he has to do, like he's not as like lighthearted and fun, and he doesn't get to be like the jokester character, and so you get to have that for other characters.
And also in real life, like, you might not be the most interesting, vivacious person. That doesn't make you not interesting. Did I say the most interesting and then I said
not interesting?
It doesn't.
But you're still interesting, even if there's
if you're
people
not
that you
like
feel
the
are
most
more interesting.
out there person, you're not interesting. You're still, you know, your point of view is still worth reading.
A book that does this so well is Damsel Distress by Kelsey Mack. It's our book club pick for next month. She feels like the ugly stepsister, but she's the main character.
And one of the other main characters is so awesome to read about. I won't say who. I'll let you guys read the book and figure it out. But, like, they're really, really cool to read about, and he does steal the show a lot of the times, but that doesn't mean that I don't like reading. Like, I wouldn't want to read from his perspective. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's really interesting, but I enjoy the point of view.
I say just like the important thing is just to make sure that your main character does have like a defined personality, because I think an easy thing with main characters is you kind of want like sometimes as a writer you want your main character to be everything. You're like, I want them to be like the funny person and the nice person and the brave person and the everything. And if you try to do all of that, then they're not going to feel like a real character anymore. That's when it's a problem, because secondary characters would be more interesting. So you want your characters to still be interesting and have their own personality. It just might not be the like super fun personality. It might be the more serious, brave personality like Harry.
Also, and we've mentioned this a few times, if the secondary character is really pushing out there, maybe they're not a secondary character.
Try writing something from their point of view and see what happens.
Or even switching between the multiple points of view, having him and her or whatever. I also think I was going to say, like, we're talking about Kenji and Shatter Me. I don't think I necessarily would want to read from his point of view, because I would feel like I was missing out a little bit on experiencing him.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason why we love secondary characters is because of the point of view we read in feels that way about them. Like, Juliet looked up to Kenji as this thing that was just, he's so strong and loyal and funny, but if we were in his head, maybe it's completely different. Maybe he's much more
like
somber in his head and very, you know,
it wouldn't
funny
be the same
outwardly.
effect. Yeah, it wouldn't be the same effect.
I just think of Thor in Allegiant, how like we got in his head, and I was like,
so
I hate you. Just stop talking.
It can sometimes just ruin a character if it's not. Oh boy.
We have feels about that. You can find it in an old chat.
Watch our previous Allegiant chat where we talked about dual point of view, and again, I think
How not to do it.
that was mostly the voice was so indistinct. So if you create a really compelling, well-rounded, believable voice that's interesting to read, you'll never have a problem getting someone to enjoy reading from that point of view.
Yeah.
Three-dimensional characters!
Woo! Do we have any other questions or comments?
I will check one more. We've been going for over an hour now, so.
Yeah. We're coming up on
I'm
an hour and a half.
not seeing anymore. We can do the announcement of the winners.
Announcement
To wrap
of
this up.
winners! Yay.
Drum roll, please.
Thank you so much, everyone who entered. We were so pleased with how many people entered. And if we say your name, we'll put the names in the description afterwards, too, if you, like, think we said your name and you want to be sure. But if we announce you as a winner on YouTube, please email us at wordnerdsvlog@gmail.com so that we can arrange to have your prize sent to you. The same goes with Twitter or Tumblr or Facebook, but I believe we can also message you there.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do that as well. So our YouTube winners, for the first one, any book from the book Depository, $15 or less, is Melody Chen.
Yay!
And
Wait, let me get the sound effects going. Hold on. I'm gonna get the sound effects of cheering. Hold on. Headwear? I don't want to wear anything on my head. Come on, Google. Work with me.
Get it
Oh, there
together,
we go.
Google. Come on.
Announce it again.
Melody
won the
Chen.
Got
For
it.
the signed copy of Shadow and Bone, the winner is Kaila Harvey. Our Twitter winners, the copy of On Writing by Stephen King. The winner is Alexandra George. And the second book depository book valued at $15 or less is Jamie Coudeville.
This is going great.
Our Tumblr winner is Ellie Moreton. Moreton. Woo! It's right there. Caitlin has it. Winner.
Yes, Elements of Style. It's beautifully illustrated too.
It
Oh,
looks
yeah.
beautiful.
It looks
Oh, books.
and our Facebook winners of critiques from Erica
That's me.
are Burgess Taylor. Is it Jehoiah, Cato? Jehoiah? I don't know.
You
But
know
you know
who
who
you
you
are. If the spelling of your
written
name
somewhere.
remotely resembles that.
Yeah. And Tim Scarrott. Thank you so much to everyone who entered. I got all of the giveaways, right? That was everything we gave away.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Thank you so much for entering. Again, email us at wordnerdsvlog@gmail.com to redeem your prizes. We'll try and get in touch with you any other way we know how. And we're so excited to send you this stuff. And thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks. Beautiful.
Go clap.
Yeah. Does anyone have any final thoughts before we sign off?
I don't think so.
All right.
I think it's covered
Tune
it all.
in next week. Yeah. This was a great chat, and we had so many viewers. Thank you so much. You guys
Yes,
may have
thank
been
you.
our highest number of consumers yet. So it was amazing. Thank you for all your comments. Be sure to tune in tomorrow to Ink Slinging Monday to find out what next week's Sunday special chat is going to be
And to
about.
see my face.
And don't forget to be
Yeah,
and to see
Kayla's
Kaylin's face. And One last thing. Be sure to be reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Lainey Taylor for our Word Nerds Book Club chat on the 28th.
So good. It's so good. You'll love it. Just read it. You'll
Yeah.
love it.
So
You won't
good.
regret reading it. Just do it.
No.
Go right now. Just go
Do
buy
it.
it. Do it. All right. We will see you this week. Bye.
Bye.